Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I am Precious Chikudi. Of course, it's a beautiful Friday morning. We start off with the front pages of the papers this morning, starting off with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with editors confab why kidnapping has replaced armed robbery, and that's coming from NSA. Rider says the Senate summoned NSA service chiefs over insecurity. Reps fume turned back service chief IGP representative over debate on security challenges. Bandit abduct Kaduna district head as soldiers ambush arms supplier. Government kill abducted priest after collecting 1 million naira ransom in Kogi. NMA threatens strike over kidnap of 10 doctors in Enugu. And we can see a photo story showing NDDC governing board inauguration. And on page 8, MTEF and FSP, we can't continue borrowing to fund Nigeria's budget. And that's coming from WALE EDUN. Looted funds. We've seized the 45 billion naira, identified terrorist financiers, and that's coming from federal government. TSO to Tinubu cancel recent civil service promotion exam. You can read that on page 12. Stories above. Appeal court declares the Zamfara governorship election inconclusive. You can see that on page 13. Editors confirm fireworks as stakeholders interrogate national security threats to elections media reform. On page 8, FJSC okays 22 justices for elevation to Supreme Court. Lastly, on front page of Vanguard, we have capital importation to manufacturing sector rises 88.2% to $861 million. We'll take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation is leading with Ribado, government winning battle against oil theft banditry. The writer says oil production has risen to 1.7 BPD. Senate invites a service chief for briefing. 31 EXCO members passed confidence votes in Akeredolu. The writer says that two commissioners abstained. Return to Akure now, group tells the governor. Stories above federal government can't rely on loans to fund 2024 budget, says minister. You can see that on page 5. Adeleke suspends the CJ despite court order. 2023 poll, why INEC experienced internal sabotage. Sultan hails Makinde for building mosques in Ibadan. Take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with from recreation to chronic diseases, poverty, how sachet alcoholic drinks breed alcoholism, thwart national development. We can see an infographic showing some of those notable alcoholic drinks. Service shut down imminent as USSD debt hits 200 billion naira. Two commissioners abstain as Ondo Escos passes a vote of confidence on Akeredolu. Insecurity, Buhari handed a tough period to Tinubu. Ribadu laments. Appeal court sacks Zamfara governor. Others rerun in 3 local government areas. And lastly, on the front page of The Guardian, FJSC nominates 22 justices for elevation to Supreme Court. We'll take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with be patient, inherited crisis won't disappear overnight, and that's coming from Ribado. Rider says the NSA appeals to Nigerians, says Tinubu inherited poor economy, insecurity, exposed deficit inherited from Buhari, be transparent, Obi challenges federal government. Guinea-Bissau at 50, Tinubu pledges support for West Africa's democracy. 80-year-old woman dies in Lagos building collapse. You can read that on page 5. Osun Assembly suspend Chief Judge. Adeleke appoints replacement. Stories above. Forex. Federal government blames low export earnings. Plans diversification. Banks USSD debts to telcos hit 200 billion naira. Senate summons service chiefs, demands a security rejig. And that's how we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining, still today in the news on Vanguard Live, I am Precious Chikudi, and joining me to talk about we can't continue borrowing to fund budget by the finance minister Wale Edun is our correspondent John Alechino. He's going to be telling us more. Good morning, John Alechino. Can you hear me?
Can hear you. Morning.
All right. Can you tell us about the Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister for Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, saying that Nigeria is not in a good position to continue to its reliance on borrowing to fund the 2024 budget?
Yes. Yes, he appeared, the minister appeared yesterday before the Senate Joint Committee looking at the FSP and the MTF. Those are documents that are usually considered before budget is prepared, because they look at, they peg, the assumptions, like they take the assumptions the oil benchmark, the exchange rate, and all of that, upon which the budget is prepared. Now, he appeared before the senators, and it was question and answer time. First, he was asked to make opening remarks, after which reporters were asked to leave. So while he was making those remarks, he now said, looking at our situation at the moment, the huge money we pay, that almost 90% of our earnings are used for debt servicing. So it's like, we are in a, the thing is, if you're in a hole, as the saying, that if you're in a hole, you stop digging. If you really want to get out of that hole. So basically what he was saying is that Nigeria is in a hole financially, and that we cannot continue to borrow to meet, our needs, our day-to-day. We can't continue to borrow to pay salaries, borrow to meet basic needs that ordinarily should be taken care of by our earnings. So he's saying, what we need to do now is to get money. We should look inward, generate the revenue to meet our basic needs, and then invest in areas that would produce money to pay off our loans, meet our other obligations. He talked a lot on economics. He's saying, we do have the problem we have much more of an income problem. Like if we need to meet these financial obligations, we must. What he's saying, tongue in check, actually, is we would have to look at the areas of taxation. Because he was making examples with which countries, or developed countries, or even neighboring countries like Ghana and some of our neighbors. But what we should think more now is how to make more money rather than how to borrow more money. He who borrows, goes astray. Government spending is usually a huge challenge for most economies. We borrow even the monies we borrowed, a lot of it goes into recurrent expenditure. What do we mean by recurrent expenditure? To the layman, it's salaries, allowances, and some of these little things. When we should spend more money on things that would bring in more revenue and create jobs. Because our safety net, we should go beyond, from what he's saying actually, so we should go beyond just looking at where to borrow next. Rather, we should look at which areas we need to invest more and get money. Well, the chairman of the Senate Committee himself was making a case for the plugging of loopholes. He's saying there are so many loopholes in our economy as it is, that even revenue generating agencies of government, a lot of them are not remitting what they ought to remit after generating such revenues, and that keeping such revenues over time has proven to be a source of corruption, because when monies that are supposed to go into the consolidated revenue accounts are kept with some ministries, departments, and agencies, there's a chance of such government officials helping themselves, to to some of these proceeds that ought to go into development for be used for development purposes. And I hear he too had, I don't know, like I said, like I would say, these were things I heard. I wasn't there. In this part of the explanation I want to give now, someone hinted that he particularly raised issue with the recent purchases of vehicles that the lawmakers, literally like prioritize. You know, saying, look, those things things should have been done differently, even now that we're having challenges. Someone said probably that was, he was going there, that was where they asked reporters to step out. Like I said, I've not been able to verify that particular side to the story. But basically, he was saying, look, we should do things a lot differently if we must get out of this logjam.
Yeah, okay. So sometimes ago, the DMO office had said that we need to continue to borrow to fund our budget deficit, and saying that Nigerians should be more concerned with how these loans are utilized. And now we're hearing a different version again from the finance minister telling us that we cannot continue like this and all that. What do you have to say about that?
Well, in government, every arm or every department or every agency would want to justify its existence. That's from a layman's perspective. Now, there are no governments. I'm not aware of any government in the world. It might not be a sweeping generalization, but well, let me use the word in the Western world. There's really no government in most of the development economies that does not borrow. Borrowing, even for those in business, is not harmful. But what you do with the monies you borrow is the problem we have now. Like the supplementary budget just signed by the president, for example. We're borrowing, trillions of naira. What are we using that money for? Look at the line items. Before it was dropped, we were told we were using 5 billion to buy a presidential yacht. At this time, a lot of that money is also used to renovate. I saw a provision for the renovation of the part of the villa of the residence of the president, the vice president, and so it just a lot of this. None of this money, or a substantial part of this money, is used to fund frivolities. If you ask me, now what we ought to do when we borrow, when we get such monies to borrow, is to invest. What is it? To invest in projects and things that would generate revenue, with which we pay that loan back and still have value. That is the argument of the DMO, without them coming out to say, because they don't want to go against the president, for example. They are part of those advising the president. Now, I'm not sure WALE EDUN, the Minister for Finance, is saying we cannot borrow. No. He's saying the kind of borrowing, this is my understanding, the kind of borrowing we are engaged in is not sustainable. We can't continue to borrow to pay salaries, and make life comfortable for those in government, those in government and the legislature. No, our borrowing should be tailored towards investment that will generate revenue. If, for instance, you borrow money, if you're a businessman, for those who are in the business sector, you borrow to buy new machines, for your factory to run better, and you increase production, for instance, you create jobs. These people who you are giving jobs will pay taxes. The products you produce, you will sell, you make a profit, you pay back that bank loan. Jobs have been created, services rendered, and the economy is the better for it. That is the kind of borrowing that is healthy. That is the kind of borrowing that WALE EDUN, for instance, is making a case for. But now the borrowing we are engaged in is one that feeds the whims of those who got into office one way or another. So it doesn't trickle down to the ordinary man on the street. Families are going through hell, with the removal of fuel subsidies and all of that. And other economies of the world also have some form of, the United States, for example, have subsidies for fuel. There are subsidies for they subsidize agriculture, But the problem with our kind of subsidy here is that the subsidy, it is not the subsidy per se. It is the corruption that is in the subsidy that has caused so much uproar that led to the removal of the subsidy. I mean, it's just a simple economic.
All right. Thank you so much, John Alechini, for that detailed report.
You're welcome.
Okay, join us, correspondent Egufe Yafubori. He's going to be telling us more on what's happening at the editors' CONFAB. Good morning, Egufe. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Thanks for asking me.
Yes, can you tell us about what was being discussed at the editors' CONFAB? Why kidnapping has replaced armed robbery, according to the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu?
So it was day 2 yesterday, and that CONFAB is a big stage for stakeholders to gain media mileage. So yesterday, when we checked the area of people that would present papers, everybody was expecting that when the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu comes, he's going to spill a lot of things, he's going to say much. You don't have the boss. So it was when Ribadu came in, the National Security Advisor came in, he had a standing ovation to welcome him in, and he was actually expected to speak on a number of issues, but at there he had to improvise from his real topic because he said that national security is such a touchy and sensitive issue that it would not be right for him to divulge a lot of things. So he went ahead and spoke on the journey so far for the President Bola Tinubu administration on security, the fight against insecurity under the administration. And he mentioned a lot of things, but among the key issues he raised was that the government inherited 4 key security circumstances. The situation in the northeast, the northwest, the situation in the other part with Boko Haram, banditry, and then down south he mentioned the situation in the east, and then Niger Delta where insecurity has led to a lot of issues with oil theft and reduction in daily production. He actually said that in the Niger Delta area for oil production, that when they came in, oil was hovering between 1.1 and 1.2 million barrels per day. And that since they have come in, the coming in of the Tinubu administration, the situation, they have been able to build it up to 1.7. And he said it was not just all fight, that they are engaging a lot of stakeholders, trying to see that there are alternative ways to just fighting to deal with the security situation. And then he now mentioned the issue of kidnapping, and then he asked the audience to note that they would have noticed that kidnapping has gone up, but in corresponding proportion, armed robbery that used to be rampant is going down. And that the reason why was that a lot of people were no longer carrying cash. People do a lot of their transaction online and all that. And that because people are not carrying cash, the armed robbers are noticing that it is almost too tight. Be chasing people about and asking them for cash. Even when you invade their house, they will tell you they don't have cash in their house. So they have thought it twice in Ribadu's reasoning that what they should not be doing is to kidnap the people who own the money. And then when you kidnap them, probably their relatives or loved ones we bring out the money and give to them.
All right, thank you so much, Egufe Yafubogi. Thank you for that detailed report. All right, let's take a look at Mr. and Mrs. before we go. And Mr. is speaking, says, yes, you told me about the increase in the price of food stuff, but why did you serve this meal with a piece of meat? And Mrs. replies, says, since you didn't do anything about it, there's a warning strike. Everybody seems to be striking now. Even Mrs. is striking. Remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. Find out up-to-date stories. Go to our website, www.vanguardindia.com to find out more. I am Precious Chukudi. Make sure you have a fantastic weekend.